Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. My name is Joel Kellogg, and I'm the current president of Hope for Bristol. We've invited you here today to inform you of our Community Safety Plan initiative for residents affected by the Bristol, Virginia landfill. For years, our community has been inundated with airborne releases of toxic chemicals and harsh gases emanating from the city of Bristol, Virginia's landfill. These emissions infiltrate our homes, businesses, churches, and schools. They cause serious health effects that were documented in our community symptom survey that we administered in the fall of 2021. These symptoms range from severe headaches, burning eyes and sinuses, to rapid irregular heartbeat and tremors, along with numbness and tingling in extremities, frequent nosebleeds, and severe respiratory complaints. In addition to the physical symptoms, the mental stress has taxed hundreds of residents to the extreme. I refer to this as PTSD, but the acronym for us is present traumatic stress disorder instead of post. In all of their communications, the city of Bristol, Virginia has minimized and downplayed the true horror that their lack of maintenance and slow action has unleashed onto our residents. Landfill 588 has exhibited high temperatures, may in fact be smoldering underground, and is venting extremely hazardous compounds that look an awful lot like smoke. The wastewater from this landfill is high in benzene and still travels through both of our cities untreated, despite their earlier promise to the utility company to have a pre-treatment system in place by the end of last year. Landfill 498, the older landfill next to the infamous quarry landfill, has a woefully inadequate gas collection system. And as a result, explosive levels of methane gas have been detected underground very close to neighboring homes. These nearby residents have never been notified of the underground risk or provided with in-home monitors to make sure their houses aren't filling up with explosive levels of methane from underground. The wastewater systems and surface maintenance at this older landfill reached such disrepair that a release occurred last year into a nearby creek, resulting in an emergency response. These egregious violations and many others were downplayed or ignored to the point that lawsuits were filed against the city of Bristol, Virginia by Bristol, Tennessee, and most recently, the Virginia Attorney General on behalf of the Virginia Waste Management Board, the Air Pollution Control Board, and the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. One would assume that the sheer number of issues, complaints, and lawsuits would have spurred the city of Bristol, Virginia to completely reverse course, to communicate openly and honestly, and to take steps to ensure the safety of all residents affected by this monumental disaster. Instead, we have watched them refuse, encumber, and obstruct community efforts to procure safety and relief through typical agency avenues. EPCRA, the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act of 1986, was created to help communities plan for chemical emergencies and requires state and local governments to prepare for and protect their communities from potential risks. From the limited information that we received from Bristol, Virginia, their current community emergency plan and notification system for serious incidents at the landfill is non-existent. Their current alert system is when people start dying. So today, Hope for Bristol calls on the city of Bristol, Virginia to immediately put in place what we are calling a community safety plan. We, as concerned and affected citizens of the community, have taken the time to compose this basic plan in consultation with experts we trust. The city, as a landfill owner, has an obligation to fully inform and alert residents, to monitor the hazardous airborne emissions from the landfill, and to provide temporary relief until work can be completed to keep the landfill emissions out of our community's air and out of our homes. These three pieces form the framework of the community safety plan. At tonight's community meeting, we will present draft copies of our petition letter describing key elements of this community safety plan. This letter is addressed to the Bristol, Virginia City Council, the governing body of Bristol, Virginia. Tonight, we will ask residents to join us in signing this petition because all of our voices are needed to make this happen. With signatures attached, we will formally submit this petition to Bristol, Virginia City Council next week. It is time for Bristol, Virginia, as well as the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality and the Virginia Department of Emergency Management to finally take action together to protect the health and safety of our community before it's too late. It's the right thing to do, and now is the time to do it. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome to Bristol a person who has helped communities like ours for decades. She is known as the mother of Superfund. She's an icon, and she's a hero. Please welcome Lois Gibbs.
Thank you so much. I think first and foremost, I want to just say how privileged I feel to be here with all of you in the struggle. That, what you have done so far in stopping the incoming waste has been extraordinary. And I am so proud to be aligned with you and that effort. And all of the other efforts that you've taken. So I just want to start by saying, wow, you guys are really very powerful. And if I was an elected official in either city, Bristol, Tennessee, or Bristol, Virginia, I sure as heck would be I would be cooperating with you right away. I mean, you guys are pretty strong. I come from a community that is also poisoned, was also poisoned. My community, sadly, had to be evacuated. No one can live there now. When we moved into that house, in that community, we didn't know there was danger, and I'm sure an awful lot of the folks in Bristol, Virginia, and Tennessee don't know the dangers that are posed. But it is serious. It is not an odor. It is not a smell. It is gas. It is poisonous. It does not belong in the air. I have traveled to numbers of communities like this, and I will tell you, you say there may be a fire, I will guarantee you there's a fire there. I will guarantee you there is a fire burning. And when I was in St. Louis, Missouri, the Bristol Landfill, also a solid waste dump, also on fire, people stood there in front of the dump and their nose would just hemorrhage. Their children couldn't breathe. The seniors were taken to the hospital left and right because the air was so poisoned, and it's the same air you all have right here. I am a resident of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I am ashamed that our state legislators and our state environmental department people are doing so little to not only protect the people in Virginia, but to protect the people who live on the other side of the state line. What's coming out of this landfill is gas. When it accumulates in your homes, they will blow up. I came from a community in Atlanta where the community was evacuated. They shut off all the electricity, they shut off everything, and made people leave in the middle of the day and not return because their homes were full of methane gas. And it's toxic, it's poisonous, and it's explosive. It's not something to be dismissed, as I hear is happening, if it's some kind of odor and a nuisance. It is not a nuisance, it is a danger. It is a danger that needs to be addressed immediately. Folks who have a smell in their home, you're smelling an explosive gas. That's what you're smelling. And those who are talking about their homes being dirty and their cars, they come out and their cars are full of stuff, that is particles of poison that every time you take a breath, every time your child takes a breath, every time a pregnant woman takes a breath, they're taking that into their bodies and poisoning themselves. This is not something that should just be dismissed by the Commonwealth of Virginia. I understand in Tennessee that the government has taken some action and is pushing the state of Virginia to do something. And I commend them for doing that. I commend them for sticking their neck out, because I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy. However, I'm going to ask them to take one more step. And anytime someone needs to be evacuated because the smell is so strong, i.e. the poisons are so strong, and they want to move to a hotel and not sleep in their car in a parking lot in a plaza, the city of Bristol, Tennessee should do that and then sue the state of Virginia. The taxpayers in Tennessee, in Bristol, you should not pay for that. You should not pay for that. But you may have to put the money up front to protect the families who are living downwind of this horrible, horrible landfill. In Bridgeton, what they did when they were trying to remediate their landfill and their landfill fire, just for the record, Republic Services evacuated everybody within 1 mile before they drilled a single well. And then after they were evacuated for 1 mile radius around as a bird flies, then they put a cover on it, almost like a very thick canvas top, to try and smother the fire. You don't put wells in when people are living around it. You just can't do that. That's just feeding the fire with oxygen and letting chemicals go up into the air that are going to be in people's lungs and environments. So they did that in Bridge. Thank you. St. Louis is just so much easier. They did that there, and guess what? It failed. Once the landfill starts on fire, you cannot stop it. You cannot stop it. They are still trying to put out that fire. So this is not a simple thing. It's not a simple task to try and put out the fire. Maybe yours, they can do that. I don't know. But first they have to admit there's a fire. And second, they have to move the people when they're trying to do some kind of remediation who choose to be moved because they're sick or they don't want to get sick. And from there, they can try and put out the fire. This is a dangerous situation. I've seen communities like this before. Asthma, nosebleeds, cancers, central nervous system things, those are all very common in communities such as this where you have gases coming into people's homes and into the air. And so I am proud to stand here with you all, and I'm happy to help the community as much as I can to move forward and find the solution to move the politicians in the Commonwealth of Virginia and in Tennessee where necessary to fix this problem. And so I also have one other thing. I am honored to be able to present a scientist who will agree with us all. So I founded the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice over 40 years ago. And Stephen Lester is the science director there. He's a toxicologist from Harvard. But more importantly, he has 40 plus years of field experience similar to us. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. As Lois said, my name's Stephen Lester. I'm the science director with CHEJ, and it is an honor to be here. We do work with grassroots groups all over the United States, and you guys have done a terrific job. I also am proud of you guys, and I want to echo what Lois said earlier, and it takes a lot of courage to do what you folks are doing. You're standing up for what you believe in and what you know is right, and that's what you have to. That's how you begin to fight these. I got involved in this work, and I met Lois at Love Canal when I was hired by the state of New York to be a science advisor to the residents. And so that experience changed my life because I realized that it wasn't the science that was really changing and what was really driving what was the decisions that were being made. I sat in meetings with the head of the health department for the state of New York and the environmental department for the state of New York, and there was a lot of conversations about how to address the problems at Love Canal. And what I realized through that experience was that it wasn't about the science. You need to have the science, but it's the work of communities like you folks in this room and you folks here in Bristol that really make the difference. You have to take the science and use it to get what you need and to educate people and get people involved. So I just want to say a couple of words about your situation here, and that is, I recently reviewed the expert panel report that was done here last year in March. That was the one that looked at all of the data around what they call odors, which I also agree are not odors. Odors are something that come out of the oven when you're preparing dinner. These are toxic emissions. These are landfill emissions, and they're dangerous to people who are breathing them. But what I took away from looking at this report was one important, I think, takeaway, and that was how little is known about what's going on in that landfill. How little is known about how this fire got started, what's feeding it, and what's driving it. And this is what the experience has been, not just here, but every place these fires occur in landfills, which are quite common. This is not a unique thing that's happening here. But what's from the technical and scientific point of view, or the engineering point of view, if you will, there's not a lot of information. And the words, the two words that is repeated again and again in this report, in the findings and the conclusions and in the recommendations, are the words insufficient data. There's insufficient data to know how this fire started. There's insufficient data to know where it's moving, how deep it's moving, how quickly it's moving. There is insufficient data to determine what specific chemicals are in the fire. And so that's the driving point that I took away from this, is that they know so little about what's going on here. And this is why, from my experience and looking at many of these landfills around the country, why you see these landfill fires go on for year after year after year. The one in Bridgeton, I think, is approaching 10 years now that it's been going on. And they've had engineers studying it and trying to fix it and come up with plans, and they're doing their best with this little limited information to try to come up with a plan, as they are here. But you know what's going to happen? It's probably not going to work. It's not because that somebody came up with a plan that was a lousy plan. It's because they didn't have enough information to know what's really going on so they could design a plan that would really work. So you have engineers doing their best, but they're handcuffed by what little they know. So what's going to happen is they might make some success and get the landfill or the fire put out in one area, and then it's going to pop up somewhere else. This is what happens in place after place after place, and I would predict that that's what's going to happen here. And so that's why what Joel alerted to earlier is really important. There needs to be a safety plan that provides for people be able to leave during the construction, during the cleanup, during everyday living even, where these emissions are coming out and impacting people's health. That is a critical piece that has to happen, and I totally support that, and anything I can do to help with the community here pushing for that, I'd be certainly happy to do that. That was a key piece of the evacuation program at Love Canal. That's what Lois did, and I was a part of helping put that together as well. And what we did there was make a list of a lot of people who had respiratory problems, who were susceptible, kids, the young kids with asthma and others, the elderly, and people who are susceptible symptoms. And you can do that here too. That is definitely a possibility. It's just a matter of it takes the will and you have to push for it. So with that, so I, because of the fact that this is going to go on, that's a key piece that you have to have. So I'll be around for more questions later, and of course we'll have tonight. And so I'm again happy to be here, and I feel proud to be a part of the team of folks here working to try to address this problem. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you very much. So we have two additional guest speakers, and I'd like to introduce for our resident perspective. The first one is Tammy Rivera from Bristol, Virginia. Or Tiffany. Tiffany, I am sorry.
No, you're fine.
It's been a long day already. Tiffany, thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely.
You have to hold it close.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name, as Joel said, is Tiffany Rivera. I am a resident of Bristol, Virginia. I have lived on Shakespeare my whole life. I'm 29 years old, and my parents actually live directly across from the landfill on Shakespeare. I myself bought my home in 2019, which is located on Jane Lane, which is just off of Shakespeare Road. Kind of before the exposure of the landfill was known, before the community was speaking up about the smell and the odors and the toxins that have existed for quite some time. I remember back when I was a child, especially summer afternoons, you would start to smell, and that's kind of like when I knew, okay, it's time to go inside. Which is unfortunate that was my reminder of it's time to quit playing because you smell the landfill. One thing that kind of gets me frustrated is the citizens of Bristol, Virginia. Every year it seems like the taxes on our homes seem to increase, but the value of our home doesn't increase, especially mine on Jane Lane. The value of my home is not increasing, but I am having to pay more taxes every year, even though I'm exposed to these toxic chemicals and smells. The landfill has impacted my family tremendously. I have 2 daughters. Their ages 4 and 3. Summer days, it seems that's when the odor is more present, or I would say stronger. Summer days are cut short. There's not a lot of time of playing outside, like on the playground or playing in the backyard. We're forced to have to move inside just to limit air exposure to these toxic chemicals that we're forced to breathe. An example, this past summer, I remember we got into our pool that we have in our backyard. And upon entry of the pool, I remember smelling a distinctive smell, which was landfill odor, toxic gases, and it was like it was sitting on the surface of my pool, which was really kind of aggravating to think that could happen. Throughout our home, we have about 6 air purifiers that we mainly use at night when the odor is the strongest. And then I have to think of like spring is among us, and there's no, we can't open our windows to get fresh air. We can't open our screen doors to let fresh air in because there is no fresh air. There's no escaping the smell, the chemicals that we're forced to breathe. On my way to take my 4-year-old to preschool, often it's as soon as we hit Shakespeare or leaving Shakespeare, it's a rush to get home or to get to school. So we're not forced to have this direct exposure. So the exposure is limited because the smell is so present, especially early in the mornings. And I'll also have to question, I know that they have stated there's no short-term effects of us breathing benzene and methane gas. But I also have to think, what are the long-term effects for my daughters? Like I said, they're 4 and 3. They've lived there their whole life, so they've been exposed to these gases their entire life. What are the long-term effects going to be for them? So it just makes me question, when will we know what those long-term effects will be? So that's about it. Just we're forced to smell these toxins, and it's not fair. And as others have stated, it's aggravating, it's frustrating that we have to deal with this in our own home. So that'll be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you so much.
All right, so our next resident perspective comes from James and Irene Nunn from Bristol, Tennessee. Thank you for coming, I appreciate it.
You okay?
You have to hold it
I'm
close,
sorry.
Irene.
Is it
You want
on?
him to hold it for you? Yeah, it's on.
It's on. We are Jimmy and Irene Nunn. We live at Georgia Avenue, Bristol, Tennessee. It's part of the Fairmount community. And that is one of the hard-hit areas in Bristol, Tennessee. We appreciate the opportunity to tell how the landfill has changed our lives. We live with the fear, is this going to be the night that we have to evacuate? This has happened to us on several occasions. We've had to leave our home, take our little doggy with us, and because we had nowhere to go, we just rode around. Jimmy's had to wear a gas mask inside our house. While he was wearing a gas mask, I wore 2 or 3 face masks so we could breathe. And we've had to use Vicks Vapor Rub. You never know when you're going to get a night's sleep. It wakes you up in the middle of the night, coughing. We have several issues from it. We have headaches, ear, throat, and nasal irritation, nosebleeds, nausea, and we have a landfill hangover after a bad night. We were just lifeless. It takes us forever to get going of the morning, and it is really destroying our lives. You can't plan anything with your family because our home is covered with it, and if you can't plan anything outside or inside, and we're just tired of it. We need some relief, and I don't know how we're going to get it. And I worry more about I worry about us, but I worry more about the small children. What is this doing to them? Something needs to be done to correct this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, there's two stories. You want more? We have hundreds. We have hundreds. We have people who have moved away, who've been away for well over a year and still having effects, still recovering. We've got hundreds. If you want to hear them, just reach out to us, please. So this concludes our press conference for today. Hope for Bristol thanks you for attending. We want to give you a special thank you to the City of Bristol, Tennessee, Terry Napier, John Luttrell, and the respective staff members who have worked diligently to make this event possible. We appreciate you all. We also beyond grateful to our residents who have come to speak to you today, as well as our esteemed guest speakers. So we have some food and drink available in the cafeteria for y'all, and hope you will stay for our community meeting tonight at 6 p.m. We're going to open the doors at 5:30 here. We're also inviting everyone to Pins and Friends on State Street after the community meeting tonight. We'll be out of here wrapping up at 7:45 and out of the door at 8 o'clock. But you're welcome to come on down to Pins and Friends and let's hang out. And fellowship is one thing that has gotten us to this point and gotten us through this. So hope to see you there. Thank you. Oh, that's right. I forgot that. I didn't read the agenda. First time. So, all right. Do we have any questions from the press for any of the speakers tonight? Anybody else? Okay. Guess that means we were pretty thorough. All right. Thank you all. If you're hungry, cafeteria.